You're watching Legal Roundup with your host, Everett Pepper, a Pepper Notum Injury Law Firm.
Hey guys, Attorney Everett Pepper here with Pepper Notum Law Firm in Ridgeland, Mississippi. We're here again on the Legal Roundup show. I've got a special guest here with us today, David Wilson. He's going to come and talk to us about some of the evaluations he does with some of the clients and some of the patients that he sees. David, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, Everett, thank you for having me. Forensic psychology, that's a new process or situation that a lot of people aren't as familiar with. It's different from the counseling. If you've got two mental health people involved in a particular situation, one could be a treating counselor and the other would be an evaluating one. There's not many in the field that does the evaluations because that's called a forensic evaluation, and that involves doing a legal document and then presenting it in court. It's much easier and a lot more palatable to people if they're in their own office and has their own clients and everybody's happy and we get improvement and there's not any recordings done of it. So forensic evaluations are just different from a counseling session.
Now, how did you get started doing this?
I got a bachelor's degree at Mississippi State and in psychology, which you really can't do much of anything with that unless it's a higher degree, a graduate degree. So after being in business a couple of times, I decided at the age of 36 to go back to school. And I got a master's degree in guidance and counseling, and then went back to Mississippi State in the doctoral program. I finished the doctoral program, but had to get back being a dad and a husband, and so I didn't do my dissertation. But I've got a license, and I've been involved with this for about 15 years.
Okay. Well, that sounds like you definitely know what you're doing and got the background in it. Tell us a little bit about what kind of clients or patients that you would normally help.
Well, as most attorneys call it, it's called voir dire, and I have been deemed expert in two areas. One is family matters, which is custody, visitation, doing the Albright factors and that kind of thing. The other, I do quite a bit with you, Everett, and that's personal injury.
Okay. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about the personal injury. We do mostly, as you know, car wrecks, 18-wheeler accidents, ranging from some minor to some catastrophic type injuries. Now, what we see most of, I guess, and what people are most familiar with when you say personal injuries, or some people say bodily injuries, you know, that's the physical side of where the people hurt. Maybe something from a broke arm, or you know, a herniated disc or bull's disc in your neck or back, that kind of stuff. But we have cases where people come in, and a lot of these type of injuries, and it also leads into people that have some mental pain and suffering, and the mental anguish and that type of stuff, you know, and yeah, maybe PTSD or you know, whichever the term may fit their diagnosis. So I know that's something where you can come in and how we've you know, got you to do evaluations on these type of injuries for us.
Well, Everett, that's got my fingerprints all over it. I am not a medical doctor, so I obviously can't help with soft tissue or write scripts. But when it comes to a mental and emotional situation, many times when you have a personal injury, of course I do traumatic events, whether it's a wreck, a rape, some event that's real traumatic, then many times it changes a person. And so I am referred by sometimes the courts, sometimes the insurance companies on the defense, and many times with the plaintiff attorneys. And I'll tell you briefly, if you'd like, of what the components of that would be.
Okay, yeah, sure, below.
The first part of the forensic evaluation is a background in history. The judge does not want to read a novel, and so that's generally 4 or 5 paragraphs, and that's who you are and where you went to school and how many children you've got and where you might have worked, just to give an idea to the courts as kind of who they're dealing with and what that's about. Then the next part of the evaluation is behavioral observations. Well, that's self-explanatory. You know, if you got any suicidal ideation, any problems with the law, alcohol and drug usage, just anything of that nature. Then the next part of my component of the forensic is a synopsis of conflicts and beliefs. And what that is I am introduced to a client by you or another referral source, And I am in about 3 weeks going to be able to tell the courts exactly to what injury severity that someone has. There's about 2,000 diagnoses in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. I know about 600 of them, but I know how to look up all 2,000. But when it's all said and done, it can only be 4 things. It can be mild, moderate, severe, and chronic. And so, generally speaking, the insurance companies would like mild and moderate, and many times the plaintiffs think that their client is severe and chronic. So I'm deemed or my duties to get to a point to where I can share with the legal profession the severity as I see it. And so we do how would I put it, a pre and a post. I ask the injured to give me their inner circle. And, I don't get many smiles doing my work, being mental health, but, I tell them, Jack the Ripper's mother probably thought he was pretty good for a while. And so I don't care for, just a mom and a dad to tell me what's going on. So I ask them, can you give me a church member? Can you give me a neighbor, a coworker, a friend? Certainly you can give me a relative, but as many people that I can interview, and I do that on a telephone. I'm not an investigator, so I'm only going to call the people that the injured gives me as their inner circle. And my question is, how did this person behave? How did they function before the traumatic event, and how has it changed them? And that is what everybody wants to know. And of course, the traumatic event is the line of demarcation to how they functioned. It's a pre and a post analysis kind of thing. And after I get through doing those telephone interviews, and I'm not lazy, so it's usually 5 people to 10 or 12 that might be in the inner circle, depending on how social they are. The next part, because I'm licensed, I can give a diagnosis. And then next part comes a short-term and long-term treatment plan. That's not a life plan. That's a short-term treatment plan as to what the future mental health needs might be. If someone, and of course it's my opinion, but I've been doing it for now a decade and a half, but someone might need a face-to-face with a counselor or a psychologist. Someone may need to go into a group. Many times people think, well, what's happened to me, hadn't happened to anybody before. I feel like I'm fighting it on my own kind of thing. And so I get them to go face to face with an individual outpatient. Sometimes it's a group. I told you before, I can't write a script, so many times if I feel like that medication might assist, that's as far as I can go because I'm not a medical doctor. So I'll refer someone to a psychiatrist, and they will make a decision as to if they need any kind of anxiety medications, depressions, or whatever that may be. And so that finishes up the conclusion, which the attorneys have kind of taught me they'd like to have a dollar figure as to what the needed future mental health cost would be. So that's how I come up with that formula.
And so when you say you interview the different people that they list for you to, call and ask questions about, I assume you mean when you talk to their family, you want to get some outside people also that know them personally, but not necessarily have a family bias to what they're going to say.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And the more people that I can speak to, everybody sees us in different veins, in different degrees, and that kind of thing. So a neighbor would see somebody, in a different degree than a mom or a dad. And the more that I can do, it is proven that the validity of the evaluation is higher. The more people that you've got that kind of sees, a change. If just for a little bit, many times someone is outgoing, enjoys high school football games, meets neighbors at the mailbox, excited about whatever comes along, friends, family. And then after a wreck, or a traumatic event, they're worried about the future. They don't know if they can get back to their jobs and perform like they used to. They're scared. Many times they're depressed. They're certainly anxious. There's a lot of sleep disturbances and appetite issues. And so with that, the array of people that I interview can share those components, which give me a little better insight as to exactly the severity that someone has functioned.
Well, And it's part of my job as an attorney. When a potential client comes in, we do an interview also, but we mostly gather the facts and details surrounding, the liability side, and then we transition over to the damages side, which is, it's sort of hard for us to discern sometimes, how bad these people may be injured and on that short of a visit. So as we work the case up, and meet with the clients and discuss different aspects with them, you can realize, because most of the clients, I don't know anything about them before they had the wreck. But if sometimes the little red flags go up, if this person may, everybody feels uncomfortable and, nobody wants to be in a car wreck, and hopefully it'll be a one-time thing. But, if we can identify them and they're giving us these clues or red flags that, I'm not sleeping well, that triggers us to look, say, okay, this person, may have something mental going on, and that's when we would normally contact you and, maybe just do an initial evaluation and just let you see if you're seeing what we're seeing, or because we could be totally wrong. We operate in the legal part.
Right.
And what I usually tell them is, once they hire us and, get their case moving along, we'll say, hey, right now, my job is two parts. It's obviously to try to get them paid for their damages, but, it's also, I tell them, I said, you just worry about getting well and let us handle the legal stuff. Because that's, at the end of the day, that's what we do. But it's really two parts of it. So the medical, including the physical and the mental, is why we are interested in, meeting with you and letting you come on the show and let you explain to people, that sometimes you have more injuries than they even realize, because, they're looking at it from an internal point of view.
You're exactly right. Many times, for instance, PTSD, that diagnosis has changed a little bit from the Diagnostic Statistical Manual 4 to the 1 to 5. But just to give you an idea, there's it used to be called shell shock, and it used to be called a number of things, but let's just talk about somebody that's been in a war instead of a car wreck. Those soldiers are pretty tough. They got a lot of testosterone going. At the end of the day, they think that they come back and they're big and they're bad, and they really are, but they are in a physical point. And at some point, a year or 2 years later, there's sometimes a delay. Then they start realizing this thing is on my mind more. This thing is bothering me. And then they start hearing voices, or they might have flashbacks, or they have something that there's a trigger there that they didn't know about. And so just because you have a car wreck and say, well, okay, I think I'm okay, hopefully you are. But there's a process. Many times I'll give an instrument, a major depression inventory, an anxiety inventory, and that gives me a figure as to how depressed or how anxious someone is, and certainly I'll include that in my report. The other thing too is I do as many computer analysis scoring as I can to keep whatever bias that both sides think I may have, which I'm pretty good at just seeing what I see and moving on. There's no personal gain in anything that I do. The other thing too is what you might have mentioned, and it just hit me. I probably will spend more hours seeing your client than you will until it gets closer to the trial. One time I see someone doesn't make a pattern. 2 times I see someone, that's a coincidence. 3 times is a pattern. Mm-hmm. And of course, the other side, when I'm testifying, they can't whip me and they can't shoot me, so they try to discredit me. And many times I know what the soft underbelly of the questions are because we've been in court so many times, but they're also legitimate questions because the evaluation has to be qualified and certified and bona fide as legitimate. And so I don't mind the question that comes about, but I will see any of my referrals at least 3 times, and we'll have numerous conversations over cell phone if need be. So I will see them really a few more hours than you will until you get closer to the trial. Many people might not recognize that, and I can share with you some of the things that you might ask when you do go to court. If I go to court and testify, because usually if I write a report, the other side wants to quiz me and question me on some of the things that I wrote down. And so my admission into the courts is important, so I can back up or verify anything that I might have said that the other side might question or might want to be clarified.
Well, what general area do you work in?
About 80% of my deal is referrals is in personal injury. About 20% is family matters. I travel the state, so that doesn't matter. I still enjoy what I'm doing. I get more referrals from the plaintiffs than I do the defense, and I would like to have more defense work, but regardless, it is what it is. And it's just a process to do it. And when you're comfortable with it and you can get to where you need to be, and both sides are comfortable at the end of the day, then the justice is done, and usually the suitable, correct compensation is provided, and it's just a job well done by all three, the plaintiff, defense, and myself.
Well, we appreciate you, looking at the patients when we send them over. Again, like I said, we look for the red flags, and sometimes, that's obviously, I'm not trained in that area like you are, so sometimes I'd like to get you to look at them, and sometimes they may not need any further help on that end of it.
There's a time or two that I can do an abbreviated forensic, which will help you get an idea whether you're going further with the case or exactly what it might entail, which is information's always good.
Yeah, and I'm sure, a lot of times some people are obviously, have bigger problems or issues that you can see than other people that might take a little longer to figure out what's going on there.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me.
I appreciate it.
I enjoy what I do. It's certainly needed now. Way back when, many years ago, they'd say, oh, I need $50,000 for pain and suffering. Well, nowadays, things are so more regulated and want to be more specified till, you say, well, where'd you get the 50? Well, that's what I thought I needed. Well, now they want to know, is it mild or a moderate or severe or chronic mental illness? And if so, mental injury. And if so, what compensation would be correct in doing that? So it was kind of one of those things that we've just progressed over the years.
Right, and once again, there's two parts we look at. We tell them, hey, we want to get you well first and foremost, and then we'll work with your damages, whatever they may be, and you can try to get you compensated for that too. And sometimes you don't know until later on in the case. But I indeed enjoyed you coming by today, and we try to make these educational for people because some people, they just have no idea that your type of work even exists or they even need it at all. So thank you very much for coming by.
Thank you again. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Legal Roundup is brought to you by Pepper and Odom Injury Law Firm, pepperodom.com. Thank you for watching.